Hey guys, welcome to the show today and happy new year if you are listening to this anytime around the beginning of 2021. It's actually the last day of 2020 when I'm recording this. And I was just thinking really about everybody and this year and everything that we've been through personally, globally, in our communities. And I mean, some people have had a good year despite all of the things that have happened, but most of us have struggled on some level or another, whether that's having to be inside, having our finances and our businesses impacted, family being impacted. There's also, as we all know, in the United States, a lot of intense political issues and upheaval this year. So most people are a little shell shocked, maybe from 2020. And that's understandable, right? And we always go into a new year hoping that this is going to be our year. And personally, I stopped thinking about, this going to be my year, probably after my surgeries, after my emergency situation, because that really taught me more than anything else. We never know what's on the horizon, right? And I think the ultimate goal, I don't wanna say should be, but maybe is more helpful to go into a year saying, I am capable and resilient, and I will be able to work with whatever comes my way. And that's all we can do. We can't control what's going on in the outside world. We can't always control what's going on in our inside world either, right? With all the things that make up who we are. And so instead of, this idea of things coming in perfectly, just being in your flow with your family and your work and your personal life. Think about, you know, it's so hard to say like life is a game because it's so much more that doesn't give us the extent to what we have to deal with and face, right? And how hard it can be. But ultimately, we're here this go round trying to learn the lessons that our soul or our I want to say something else for those of you that don't necessarily believe in a soul, but sort of this overarching purpose that we have lessons to learn and we will face those lessons whether we like to or not. And so the more that we are sort of able to stand and look at those lessons and say, okay, I'm ready to learn and I'm ready to make the changes that I need to. And you're not going to feel like that 100% of the time, but you're going to get, it's going to get easier. So for me now, for example, I used to take quite a while to really make the changes that I needed to change. Like I can think about being in my 20s and hearing that I needed to cut out, all sugar and all alcohol. And I was like, what? And at the time, it was for 6 months. And I thought that was just an insanely long time, and then here I am 20 plus years later and recognizing, health is this journey and this continuum and how I'm better able to take what comes at me and make the necessary changes more quickly. And that doesn't mean perfection, and that doesn't mean that I do those things 100% of the time, but it just means that I am able to kind of roll with the punches a little bit more, and that's what I think going through all of this gives to us. And it's not just for the sake of rolling with the punches, a little bit easier, but that you're able to actually enjoy life more because of being able to roll with the punches. We got to find that enjoyment in and where we can, right? We've learned that this year. Maybe we haven't. Maybe you're still fighting against that and that's okay too. So, today's episode, I just really wanted to share with you some of my biggest health ahas. I don't want to say discoveries, but health ahas this year because I'm constantly learning so much. I'm doing trainings all the time. So I'm doing one-off trainings and then I'm doing full programs. So this year I completed Restorative Wellness Solutions level 2, which was on hormones, and level 3, which was on serum blood labs, in order to be able to look at those from functional perspectives, and help my clients support their bodies and their needs through nutrition and nutrients and herbs and things. So it's pretty powerful. Learned a lot. Still got a lot to learn. Always, always, always. So, anyways, I just wanted to share with you guys kind of the biggest ahas that came out of this year for me, and hopefully they will help you too. So I've got my little list here. I'm not, yeah, there were so many that I thought about including, and I was like, all right, pull it back. So we're going to start off with the big one for me this year. And this was what I was really excited about, taking level 3 with restorative wellness, is to learn more about how to work with thyroid. So I have had, at least knowingly since my late 20s, subclinical hypothyroidism. Probably had it longer, honestly. My guess is, like, I probably had some elements of that going on in high school because, I didn't eat well for my body, what my body needed in high school, like any of us. I mean, maybe kids today do, but most of us did not do that for ourselves. And that's fine. But anyways, so that was something that was there. I was lucky enough to work with a naturopath in my late 20s who kind of saw that writing on the wall, and he put me on natural desiccated thyroid medication. And I was on that for a while and it helped. It wasn't perfection, but it helped. And then I moved and didn't have health insurance. And, North Carolina laws with naturopaths are very different than California. So I got off of it. And I've kind of managed things okay for the last, I guess almost decade, um, by using like over the counter thyroid glandulars. So they're glandular, but they're over the counter, right? So it doesn't have the amount of thyroid that you would find in a prescription strength, and like thyroid supports and that kind of thing. And it was fine. Could have been better, but it was fine until my surgeries. And then, if you know anything about the thyroid, it's very sensitive, and it's very sensitive, particularly even more so in women's bodies with hormones impacting it. And it just, it struggled. Between all the medications, between the trauma of the surgeries, the list goes on. It's impacted, right? And so I early this year really found out that my thyroid was not doing well. I tested myself because I was just gone, could not focus, brain fog, just really struggling with energy. So I ran a panel and saw that my TSH was above 5, which, if you know anything about thyroid panels, like, that's even a doctor, like an allopathic doctor, is going to look at that and say, "Ooh, yeah, you got some stuff going on here." Functionally, we like to see TSH between 1 and 2. So with TSH, you actually want it on the lower end. You don't want it higher. So I worked with my doctor and I got on thyroid med, very low, low dose. But it kind of helped some. But then by late, probably October, maybe of this year, I was like, it's just not doing what I needed to do. So ran tests again, did a full, went to my doctor and did full panels, and did the thyroid panel on my own. And it was not much better with that medication. Those numbers barely budged. And so, I mean, my TSH came down a little bit, but really my T3 went up, which is free T3 is your um, actual thyroid hormone, the active version of it. And that T3 went up by like 0.2%. percent or 2 points. And so yeah, it was not helping. Luckily, I learned so much in my RWS program about the thyroid and really tinkering with different things. And so, what I want my lesson to you, if you suffer with thyroid issues, is first and foremost to make sure that you get the nutrients that essentially make up your thyroid function, get those in line. And the big four are iodine, selenium, magnesium, and what am I forgetting? Oh, zinc. So iodine, selenium, magnesium, and zinc. And these are, you're going to find those in thyroid support supplements. Those weren't enough for me, apparently. So I really had to tinker around with the amounts. So let me put a little asterisk here. If you have Hashimoto's, or if you've never tested your thyroid antibodies, I don't recommend supplementing with iodine until you do. If you do have Hashimoto's, work with a practitioner for sure if you're going to bring any iodine in, right? Because it can not be great, but it can also be helpful in certain amounts. So because we do need that iodine. Tyrosine is another thing that can be very helpful for some people too in terms of their thyroid function. It's never really impacted me that much. So, anyways, dialing in those numbers for myself, and this is something that I would recommend working with a practitioner who understands what kinds of amounts you should be looking at and how you can, slowly titrate up, not go too high on any of these things, and really track your progress. But for me, figuring that out and also using what's called a protomorphogen. So, another thing that can be very helpful, besides being on thyroid medications, is to use a glandular. This can be enough for some people to do the glandular if you're, really just not producing enough of that thyroid hormone. So, for me, the issue was lying in partly the issue was lying in the conversion from the inactive T4 to the active T3. So I was actually having enough thyroid hormone going on. I just wasn't having enough of the active. And so that's where, you're really getting into some of the selenium and iodine needs. But glandulars, even though I use kind of a very low dose glandular for a few years, as I mentioned, to kind of get me through, any of the more powerful ones made me super jittery. And it was almost like I could feel it, but I was still tired. So I recognize for me that even being able to look at my numbers, it's like, oh, I actually have enough thyroid hormone happening. The issue is lying elsewhere. And so one of the things that I brought in was a protomorphogen, which is essentially, um, sort of an aspect of the hormone or the cell. So, protomorphogens are composed of nuclear proteins, and they're essentially just like a bunch of enzymes and their activators that you find in the cell. So, this is, you can maybe think of it in terms of sort of a homeopathic impact, although it definitely has, you know, um, the enzymes in there, which when you think of traditional homeopathics, it's a very, 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 I mean, it's enzymes in there, I guess you could say. It's a very, very, very diluted form of whatever you're trying to treat, right? And this is more an actual thing to help you kick up what's going on with your thyroid. A low functioning thyroid to get it going. So this has been very, very helpful for me to include the protomorphogen in there, and doesn't give me the jitteriness. So that may be something that you want to look into yourself, or talk to a practitioner about that understands these things. A lot of times we really just need to feed our bodies what they're missing, and this definitely, the more and more I learn, shows up on a mitochondrial level in our cells. That's where everything begins. And all of the issues that show up in our bodies go back to that kind of base level, and things that I'm gonna go into here in just a second impact our mitochondria so intensely, and so that's when you got problems in your mitochondria, everything else is not gonna work well, right? So we gotta go in and we gotta, like, feed our mitochondria, we gotta feed, our systems with the nutrients and the enzymes and everything that they need. So that was super helpful for me, so I've been off medication for a couple months now, and it's taken me, there's a little trial and error, you gotta figure it out, but every day I feel more energy and feel stronger, so super excited about that. Very happy to get my thyroid working better than it has in years. I think, this is just a little side note that had I been able to sort of hone in on my thyroid issues really in my 20s, then I probably would have been able to not have adrenal issues to the extent that I did in my 30s, which is directly connected to the big old fibroid that I grew and, had my surgery and went through all the rigmarole that I did with that. I really truly believe so much goes in my health world goes back to my thyroid not functioning properly. So I'm very happy to finally, get that happening. And I encourage you, if you do have energy issues, if you do have, the cold hands and feet, the hair loss, all those things, but particularly so many women, it's the energy issues, right? And it's really sitting in your thyroid and your adrenals, almost always together. Little extra side note on that, little tip. I learned last year for the first time doing a Dutch that my cortisol was actually high in the afternoon, even though that's my, most tired time as it is for many people. And that showed up once again, not as high, but it showed up once again in my Dutch this year. And so, what I found for myself, there's using definitely a particular product, but just saying phosphatidylserine is essentially what it is. Using that with clients to help them sleep at night is very, very helpful, right? Because it'll bring down that high cortisol, it'll level it out. But it's also, and I found this with myself, very helpful to take that, say, at lunch or after lunch in order to help your energy be nice and level throughout the afternoon. And that's in my case. The explanation there is I had this high cortisol going on, which is weird. You would think, oh, I'd be like, all over the place with energy versus actually being tired. But that is one way that it can show up. High cortisol is actually you get tired. And so taking the phosphatidylserine at that lunchtime, after lunchtime, has helped me to not have that afternoon dip, which has been very good. So that's just a fun little tip for you. Next, I think the biggest kind of aha that I had this year in my learning process and in the, world of health beyond just myself is just really how almost, and this is going to be controversial to say, and I know it, but almost every illness, the underlying component is a virus, a pathogen or multiple pathogens, mold, or heavy metals. And in many cases, it's all of these things, right? And this is, of course, something that if you went to your regular doctor, they're going to be on what? If you go to a functional, medical doctor, they're probably going to understand that. So it's not controversial really in the functional health world. But, the more I learn, the more I train, the more that I learn from fabulous functional medicine doctors. Yeah, it all comes back to that. And we have a terrain inside of our bodies that has been so messed up by the toxins in our environment and in our food that this is what's causing the issues, guys. And it sucks because we don't have a lot of control. I mean, even if you eat organic, there's still things that are getting in that are going to sit in your body and wreak some havoc. And, the antibiotics and the birth control pills that change our microbiome and allow for pathogens to set up shop. It's it's tough, but we can do a lot. There's so much you can do in order to clean up your system and really regain your health. In some cases, be feel better and healthier than you ever have in your entire life, which is amazing. It takes time. It takes patience. I mean, for some people, it can take a couple of years of doing some deep, deep cleansing, and you have to do a little, pull back a little. I mean, we're so bio-individual that you can't say for anybody how long it's going to take and exactly which path it's going to take. But these are the things to look out for. And I really hope that more and more of us in 2021 and beyond are able to work on that level because everything else is just a band aid. I hate to say it, but you know, I mean, we all need supplements, but a lot of us are just dumping supplements down our throats that they're either a band aid or aren't helping. And to really get targeted to what's going on in your body and cleaning these things up, right? Getting them out of your body so that your body can naturally do what it's always done throughout history to take care of itself. It's just going back to the mitochondria, our cells are bogged down with this stuff and it influences and impacts every part of our health, from our heart to our hormones to our pancreas to our bladder to our ovaries and everything in between. So really think about that if you haven't looked into any of this information before. There's a few really good people I'd say to learn from. Dr. Jess on Instagram is one. She definitely covers this stuff in depth. Um, Dave Asprey for Bulletproof, if you've heard of Bulletproof, he's got the Bulletproof Radio. He definitely talks a lot about mold and goes into in depth there, so you can learn a lot there. And let me think about who else that I really like. um oh, Dr. Ben Lynch, he talks about our genes and how these things impact our genes. So yeah, start looking at this. I think the 2020 was a call to arms for a lot of people in terms of their health, and this is a way to dive deeper and come out even better, on the other side. So that's my second big aha for the year. Third would be something that I've known forever, but I saw it even more personally this year, and that is doing the emotional work is absolutely 100% necessary in order to heal the body, the physical, manifestation of the emotional work. And I think I'm in a place now where I feel like we should all actually have therapy all the time. I mean, through our lives, you know, switching up types of therapy and not working with the same therapist necessarily all of that time. But there's so much from our childhood and beyond, and then in the day to day that, to not just talk about it because I mean, that's great, but to do actual processing work, move it through your body, move it out the other end. And this year for me, I got to see the changes in myself from this year and a half of therapy this go round. I did a lot of therapy in my 20s too, but working with this form of somatic therapy, which is called AIT, Advanced Integrative Therapy, I really can see how my reactions are different. And the thing about that is it's not about being able to take control of your reactions, but it's about being able to shift them and shift those patterns, um, because you've been able to take down a notch. Reactions are so hard, right? Because they are embedded in us, we usually through deep trauma. And so in the moment to act in a different way, even if we want to, and our brains are, or the ego intellectual side wants to control it, we can't, right? That I think it's the amygdala is just like bah, blaring with reptilian rage, or what have you. Um, but getting this kind of almost like as I'm talking, I'm realizing the mitochondrial aspect, right? So getting to the sort of like lowest layers of where this trauma resides and moving that out is going to impact the whole. So it's going to impact how you're able to be in those moments and, when you're very triggered. And for me, I'm definitely not to where I want to be yet. I still can struggle. For me, it's more of a, maybe a freeze situation. I definitely wanna flight a lot of times, but also freeze, and not being able to sort of get my words, in the way that I want in that moment, and so I'm getting better and better at that, at being able to do it in the moment or speak to it right after, which I'm grateful for getting there. And I absolutely believe, going back to my thyroid, we did a lot of work really around this speaking issue, right? Being able to speak, thyroid, very intimately connected. We did a lot of work in therapy on my thyroid and my liver as I was working physically on my thyroid and liver. And I think that things would not have shifted for me in the way that they did if I wasn't doing both of those at the same time. So I implore you, I tell my clients all the time, I work with them mindset work, but really I don't have the capability of supporting a client in terms of deep, therapeutic role. And so get work with somebody who does. I can't say enough how much that's going to help you in your process of healing your body, whatever is happening in your body. You got to do it. Finally, I'm going to end this episode with the last thing, and this is such a, it feels flippant to say it, and so common knowledge, but it was a big aha for me this year, is exercise is absolutely 100% necessary for me for good mental health. So, if you've listened for a while, you know that I was a dancer for years. I taught dance. So I was kind of moving my body, quite a bit, and knew that that felt good to me. And that was just, it, it wasn't even really a thought because it was just what I was doing. So I didn't understand how much it really impacted me mentally until I wasn't doing it consistently. So particularly with COVID and the sort of clamp down that happened, I was lucky enough for a friend and I decided to work out together every morning on Zoom, almost every morning, and we did that for about 6 months, and that was fantastic, and that's when I really noticed, like, "Oh my god, yes, my days are so different when I work out in the morning," from that mental health angle and just feeling generally happier. And so I know I need that, and it's one of those things where, I mean, I definitely love to move my body, but sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I gotta do this thing, I gotta work, I gotta," and I can't skip it. It makes such a massive difference. So I can't be there for other people as well if I'm not doing that for myself. So I encourage you, you don't have to be doing HIIT. You can be doing yoga or Pilates or what have you, but, um I think especially as a woman, as we age, we need it even more to really keep our mental health in a good place. So I encourage you, in whatever way feels good to your body, to make that a priority in 2021. So those are some of my big ahas. I mean, there's so much more I could go on and on about from this year, and everything that I learned about myself, about my clients, about, what's on the horizon in terms of next level working with health. But this is some of the most important stuff. So I hope that you have a fabulous, fabulous transition into this new year, wherever you are, whatever, level of celebration or non-celebration you are having. And, we're not here to say everything is going to be amazing in 2021. We're not here to say I'm going to get that perfect body, I'm going to get that perfect health. Don't do it to yourself. It's not worth it. What it is for me is this time of recommitting to a lot of things that I figured out this year for myself around my health. and just doing those things day to day. I mean, it's not that exciting, right? It's not the big like, ah, it's the day-to-day stuff that we do that actually really matters. And celebration is definitely in there, but not crazy celebrating every day because that's tough on your body. So balance it out, work it out. I know you can do it. We're getting better and better. I'm so happy that you've been around listening this year. I hope that you are with us again next year. I am going to be talking about different experts next year on some of the things I even brought up today. Like, definitely going to have a mold expert come on the show, talk about the connection to hormones, and diving deeper because that's what we're here for. Send me any thoughts that you have on the show. Send me any questions. I'm always happy to dive into some of the topics that you guys talk to me about. Leave us if you're listening on iTunes, leaving us a review is super super appreciated. It makes a huge difference in just getting the show out there, and it's something free and easy that you can do, for to just give back. I love giving to you guys this information, and I appreciate you giving back by just giving me a review. So all right, I will see you next time.